Do names like Deathstalker, Beastmaster, Conan the Barbarian, Hercules and Gore bring back those 80s video store memories? Well, if so, you're going to love our Sword and Sorcery special episodes. Coming soon to the 80s show, so stay tuned for more. Coming to you from a basement studio somewhere down under, it's the 80s show with Australia's Retro Man. On tonight's show, Retro Man talks about some special upcoming episodes on Sword and Sorcery movies. Well, what are we waiting for? Lights, camera, Retro Man! G'day viewers, Retro Man here and welcome to the 80s show. Now today we're getting a little nostalgic. Let me start by saying in the 50s and 60s there was a genre known as the sword and sandal film, and one of the big ones was Hercules starring Steve Reeves. He was this epic bodybuilder. He won numerous titles, Mr. Universe, etc. And they were big films, these big epics in the 50s and 60s, and it was known, like I said, as the sword and sandal genre. And in the 80s, something else happened. Arnold Schwarzenegger came on the scene. He was the big bodybuilder at the time, and he won all of those, numerous bodybuilding titles. I mean, they just went on and on and on. His titles are like a list this long. And he had that great movie out called Pumping Iron in the 70s, that bodybuilding film. And then all of a sudden, guys, they put him in Conan the Barbarian, and it kind of turned the sword and sandal genre from the 50s and 60s into the sword and sorcery genre because it injected these fantasy flavours. And the sword and sorcery films in the 80s were something else. I mean, they were low budget, some of them were campy, others was really violent and grotesque. But it all added up to a lot of sword and sorcery fun for the most part.
Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
So Conan the Barbarian kind of became the godfather of the sword and sorcery genre in the 80s, and Arnold, of course, repeated that formula again with Conan the Destroyer, and then shortly after that he played Calidor in Red Sonja with Bridget Nielsen, and these films just kept going on and on. I mean, Canon Films, which are the guys behind Gore, they got in on the action with Hercules. They did a reworking, a bit of a fantasy take on Hercules, that old Steve Reeves film with Lou Ferrigno, who was Arnold's opponent in that bodybuilding film Pumping Iron. And they did two of those, Canon. There was Hercules, and then there was The Adventures of Hercules, sometimes titled Hercules 2. And Sybil Danning was in that original Hercules with Lou Ferrigno, the incredible Lou Ferrigno from the Hulk TV series. Which leads me to say that from time to time you'll see me pop up on here doing some retrospectives on some of those exciting sword and sorcery movies from the 80s. It's kind of fun to relive these things years later. And when you put that sword and sorcery zeitgeist together and you think of Conan and Hercules and all these guys and Tal from Gore, you kind of know what was going on in the era. I mean, one hit led to all these other subsequent films that wanted a piece of the action. So that's the sword and sorcery genre in the 80s, if you will. And it was a fun time. These films were really populating those video shelves, and they were full of action and magic and excitement. So tell me your thoughts and feelings on the sword and sorcery genre in general. I think it was a very fun genre in the 80s. And in some sort of ways it's making a comeback today due to Game of Thrones. I mean, Game of Thrones has really lifted the profile of this sort of stuff again. And it's back on Netflix, these types of, and Amazon, they've got all these mystical sword and sorcery adventures playing now. And there's that Lord of the Rings one on Amazon at the moment. So it's all back in vogue, guys.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Now, to kick things off, I've decided to talk about two obscure sword and sorcery films that have not yet made it to DVD or Blu-ray. They're actually a part 1 and a part 2, and they're canon films called Gore and The Outlaw of Gore. So I'll be taking those films for a quick spin, and I'll let you know how they hold up after all these years. So please keep a lookout for those 2 episodes coming soon to the 80s show on Gore and The Outlaw of Gore, 2 films from the Canon catalogue. So Canon was doing all this sort of stuff, and it was loads of fun. And if you're in the 80s, guys, I mean, how could you escape it? It was everywhere, and we just happened to rent it, didn't we, on video. And some people actually went a bit further and got to see these films in the cinema. I mean, there was Canon cinemas in England, as I understand it, and these films filtered onto cinema screens. So if you weren't renting them, you were watching them on the big screen, and it was certainly a genre that was fantastical. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will return. But until then, guys, like, comment, and subscribe, and keep watching the 80s show, because you will never know what is going to pop up next, because the 80s show is the ultimate nostalgia kick. Anyway, guys, this is Retro Man, living the dream, 80s style. Stay gold. Thanks for watching. Retro Man will return faster than a boomerang and more powerful than the incredible Lou Ferrigno. Please subscribe, and good night, viewers.